Right, welcome everyone to another episode of Plexus Life. Tonight we are going to be talking about childbirth, pregnancy, and everything that goes along with it, doula work, of Plexus Life. Hang on one second. Tonight we are going to be talking about childbirth, pregnancy, and everything that goes along with it. I'm having some audio issues. Doula work of Plexus Life. Tonight we are going to be talking about childbirth, pregnancy, and everything that goes along with it. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, technical difficulties. All right, so here we go. So we're going to be talking about doula work, childbirth, pregnancy, and the human microbiome. And tonight I have a very special guest. I'd like to introduce you guys to the wonderful Autumn McLeese, who is an Emerald Ambassador with Plexus Worldwide and is also a doula. Autumn, would you like to kind of introduce yourself really quick?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, awesome. Yep, my name is Autumn McLeese. I currently reside in Southern California. I am a mom of two little kiddos. I consider myself a holistic, crunchy mama. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease about 10 years ago, and I've been on a health journey ever since that I'm sure we'll get into tonight. School sweetheart. We have 5 dogs, and I've been with Plexus for 2 years.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. First of all, I know you guys are on vacation right now and you're jumping on, and I certainly appreciate you carving out just a moment of your time for us tonight. So why don't we just jump right in and talk about, let's start with your role as a doula. So how did you enter into doula work?
All right. Well, it started with my own birth, the birth of my daughter, which was our second child. And after her birth, for health. But I will explain because there's a story. So my son, who's currently 9 years old, was an unnecessary C-section. And I say unnecessary because it was not an emergency. And the doctors basically just kind of more or less pressured me, talked me into it. And I had, I felt like my birth experience was robbed from me. The doctors got to see my baby's first breath before I did. I personally just felt kind of like a wimp, like my body couldn't perform. I couldn't push out a baby. My body was broken. And so I left his birth experience, of course, completely and utterly in love with my new baby boy, very deflated in what I thought I was going to have in, me welcoming him and what I ended up with. And so not long after that, I went deep into research to how to have what's called a VBAC. So that stands for vaginal birth after cesarean. And I'm going to be talking probably about that here and there tonight. So I was looking already to have a VBAC long after having my son. I was bound and determined to not have another C-section. And so about 3 years, 2 years later, we got pregnant with my second, and I had still not come to any solid conclusions of how I was going to do this. So I went and I met with a midwife, and she happened to be one of the Inland Empire where I live in Southern California, happened to be one of the most well-known midwives in all of Southern California, and I might dare say even in all of California. We talked with her, we asked her questions. Long story short, we decided we were having a home birth, and a VBAC home birth at that. And wow. So long story short, went on to have an amazing home birth, welcoming my daughter into the world. My husband got to help deliver her up into my arms, and it was a life-changing experience, not only for me, myself as a mother. It changed our marriage, and it just changed my view of birth. And so from then on, I knew I needed to go out and support women, protect them from unnecessary C-sections, help them if they were looking to have a VBAC, and overall help each woman achieve the birth that they ultimately desire.
Yes, that is awesome. I've had both. I had a C-section and I had a natural, like a vaginal birth. And the C-section came after the vaginal birth, but even for the first one, they thought I was going to need a C-section. And I was really, really grateful that I was able to deliver, you know, au natural. Really quick before we get too much further in here, I want to do just a quick disclaimer with you guys. So Plexus does not, we are going to be talking about Plexus, but just overall for tonight's podcast, please keep in mind Plexus does not claim to cure, treat, prevent, or diagnose any disease or disorder. Tonight you are hearing testimonials and experiences from independent Plexus ambassadors, and any research that's presented has been research done by an independent Plexus ambassador and not necessarily a doctor or a scientist. So we're not making medical claims. This information is in no way intended to bypass medical advice. We recommend consulting with your physician before starting any new products or supplements so that you can make an informed decision about how to handle your health and or pregnancy. So Autumn, thank you so much for sharing your experience with your childbirth and how, you know, that kind of came to pass that you pursued this sort of field. And congratulations on doing a VBAC, because I know those used to be very commonplace and they're not so much anymore. And I personally believe that it has to do with the risks that have come in the past, because let's be honest, right? Childbirth, things can go wrong. Sometimes they do go wrong. That isn't, you know, the majority of the time, those are the one-offs, but because hospitals are often concerned about money or lawsuits or things like that, they push for what they know isn't going to get them sued necessarily. I mean, am I wrong in saying that? I don't know.
No, right. You're right.
We're on the same page there. And I have a dear friend who is a gynecologist, and we've had conversations about this. And I know at the end of the day, they're trying to do what's best for the babies, but I can't help but think and believe that the training that has been put in place has been, there's been a lot of fear mongering in some of the training. So anyhow, that's my 2 cents on it. And so with that, I did want to, what's that?
Right there with you.
Yeah, okay. So with that, can you explain to us, what is a doula? What is a doula?
A doula is a birth worker who provides mental, emotional, physical support. Birth is each one of those. It's a mental process, an emotional process, and a physical process. And helps the mom in positions, help manage pain. She's also, in a sense, her servant. You know, we're overseeing, making sure she's comfortable, making sure she's maybe eating in early labor, drinking throughout labor if she doesn't already have an IV, or if she's at home. So just overall being that support by her side from the beginning to the end.
Okay. So my friend, the reason I even know about doulas is several years ago, I had a friend, she was having her baby sort of independently, and she asked that, you know, I be a part of the birthing process with her and be there. And she said, I really want to hire a doula. And I said, what? What's a doula? I don't even know. And this is before, you know, I don't even think I was married. No, I actually was not married. So kids weren't even anything close to being in my future. And so that was my first experience encountering a doula at work. Would you say it's kind of like a birthing coach, like in a certain way? I mean, you're offering so much encouragement and support. To me, that's a little bit like coaching through the process. Is that?
Exactly. Yep. Birthing coach is a great word, a descriptive word for the job.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So jumping in to your Plexus journey, how did that kind of come about? I mean, we're kind of touching on a couple of subjects here, but I just want to make sure we have like the full picture.
Yeah, so plexus, completely different subject area of my life. For everybody that knows me knows that I have two passions in life, and that's birth and health. Health came into the picture a little bit earlier, before birth. So like I said, about 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and that sent me on a health journey to learn I could fix my body. I wanted to reverse my condition. I believed it was possible. Our immune systems are intelligently designed to do so. Our cells regenerate themselves. So I had some struggles that was actually going to keep me from having the birth that I wanted with my second child and my VBAC. So I sought out some holistic practitioners. Through the process, I became friends with them, and I'm now good friends with a nutritionist, a naturopath, and a holistic doctor. And so I found out about plexus through two friends. I was watching their lives literally radically be changed by these products, and I was so happy for them. And at the same time, I saw them and actually making an amazing income from home. And this was just in, a matter of months, really. It took me quite some time, though, because I was not a fan of network marketing. In fact, I didn't believe in it. All I saw was do, all for maybe $20 a month is what I thought. And it just didn't seem worth it to me. So it took some time of my upline working on me. And we were in a situation where husband, we lived in feast or famine for very many years based on his job. And it was not good. And he worked so hard, but it was just our current circumstances and the economy and all of that. And there was really no changing that. We were pretty much stuck in that cycle. Yes. So long story short, my friend finally kind of said that right thing that struck a chord with me, and I actually joined Plexus for the business. But I would not join until I had sat down and researched every single product. And so I did that. I actually spent many weeks. I wanted to know exactly every ingredient in every single product and made a whole computer. And so because I could not support, nor could I take products that I myself wasn't comfortable with and that I didn't know what they were. And surprisingly, Plexus blew me away. I mean, I have seen so many different natural health supplements. I've been on so many different natural health supplements, and the combination and the purity and the efficacy of our products is unlike anything I have ever seen. And I was actually experiencing health benefits. So I got into the business. I came into Plexus specifically for the business, but then got on the products and surprisingly had health changes. And I had just come from time of my life from, working with this holistic doctor. I'm reversing my autoimmune disease. And I was just, so I am so blessed by this company. I am a huge fan of network marketing now, especially Plexus. I know Plexus works. The products are real. The business is absolutely an opportunity of a lifetime. Basically how I'm here.
Awesome. And so you and your autoimmune situation, now I know we can't really cure autoimmune disease, correct? Like any autoimmune issues, kind of something that you're going to carry with you, but does it seem like it's in remission, or how are you doing with your health currently?
I dare say that I have reversed it. I was able to actually bring all my levels back down to normal. That was before I found Plexus. I still had some other little health issues kind of on the outskirts of my health that were nagging at me, and some basic stuff, but the hardcore stuff was gone. And Plexus helped get rid of all those extra health issues that I was struggling with. So
icing on the cake.
Loving Plexus, yeah.
Icing on the cake, yeah. I always say it enhances what you're already doing.
Wait, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I just said it was kind of like the icing on the cake. Like it just finished it off, yeah?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay, so with the background kind of established, And just so everyone knows, myself and Autumn, we are on the same team. Now, I'm not under Autumn. She's got her own team, but we are on that same team. Eichenhorst is our big sort of diamond team. And I have to say, Autumn, I have sat in on your trainings, and the first time I sat down, you were doing a whole product training. You went through everything, and I was blown away. I think you and I share a similar passion and appreciation for knowledge, for research, for really doing our best to be well versed in what it is that we're putting into our bodies, if at all possible. And I feel like for me, the more you know, the more you know. And I've recently kind of gone onto this whole journey of changing my diet, and I'm doing primarily plant-based. I hate to say I'm vegan only because I'm not perfect and I've only been doing it for a short time, but that's kind of the direction I'm going based on my research. And so anyhow, all that to say, for me, you know, some people prefer to live ignorance is bliss, and for me personally, I prefer to live in like that mindset of knowledge is power. And I like to be powerful. I don't know. I feel like you and I share that, yes?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
So we've got the role of the doula.
Everything that I said I wouldn't do.
Yeah, right. So going back to being a doula, let me ask you this. What is gratifying? What is the most gratifying? Well, if you can even pinpoint like the most gratifying, but what gratification do you get out of your doula work?
Well, first of all, it is an honor for a mom to welcome me into her birth space, because that's a very sacred, personal, vulnerable space and environment to be in. But to support her the biggest of her life, the most life-changing journey of her life, which is labor. It's gratifying to help reduce C-sections, unnecessary C-sections. It's gratifying to help VBAC moms achieve that VBAC and have their vaginal birth. Overall, just for any mom across the board, it's so gratifying to help just a mom accomplish whatever that birth is that she desires. So, you know, I'm not just partial to, you know, home birth or hospital birth. You know, each person has to be comfortable and confident at where they're at. I'm an advocate for education, and I gotta say that I feel like I've done everything that I said I would never do. I said I would never join a network marketing company, and here I am. I said I would never have a home birth, and I had one. School my kids, and I am. So it's just kind of funny how life goes. But I challenge you to absolutely educate yourself on your options.
Awesome. So let me ask you then, you mentioned, you know, every woman needs to, and every family for that matter, I suppose, needs to figure out what level of comfortability they have during that very sacred time and what they feel is safest. We're not in any way saying you should do it this way or you should do it that way, or shame on you for not doing this way or anything like that. There's no shame here. We're literally just talking about different options. And I personally started this podcast kind of out of my own desire to know more. And I have a vast area of interests, like a wide array of interests. And so this kind of falls into one of those categories that I'm really interested in. And that is female health, and especially like motherhood. So as you said, you know, everyone needs to sort of choose where and how they want their birthing experience to be. What settings have you experienced birth in, like as a coach, as a doula? Where have you done that work?
Mostly hospital. Next in place would be home births, and I actually have not done any birth center births. Where I'm from, most popular is hospital, and then home birth has, you know, probably more moms doing that than birth centers. So I've not experienced a birth center. I've been doulaing. I'll be coming up on 5 years in December. Hospital births, and quite a few home births.
Okay. All right. And then well, do you have a preference for where you like to do that? Like, what's your preferred setting for a birth experience? Do you have one?
You know, I love them all, of course, but I personally feel more called to the hospital setting because that's where moms are that's where moms are usually most unsatisfied with their own birth experience. And my goal is to help protect them during that time, to make this experience as beautiful, as smooth, as wonderful as possible. So while I love home births, I absolutely love them. It's a great sort of break from, the chaos that goes on in the hospital. That's where I personally feel most called to.
Okay. I like that. I like that because there is a lot of, I feel like for the home birth mother, not that they don't need that, but the pressure of, or not even the pressure. Okay, here's where I'm coming from. So with my first, I had hoped that I could do all natural, no drugs, no nothing, right? Come to find out, they're telling me this whole time, you have to have a C-section. Because I had fibroids. I had I had one large fibroid during this pregnancy that sat over my cervix. And so it was blocking the exit. So they were like, we have to take the baby out. Now, the last ultrasound that I did, somehow during his growth, the fibroid kind of pulled away and the cervix was clear. And they were like, oh, good news. You can deliver vaginally, which is ideal. And so I celebrated that. But I was very fearful because this whole, 9 months practically, I'm prepared for a C-section. So I didn't do any Lamaze classes. I didn't do any birthing classes. I just was ill prepared to do a vaginal birth and go all natural. I read a book. Like, I couldn't even get into a class. We didn't have 12 weeks to do a class at the Y on birthing and Lamaze. I had like a couple of weeks. I think I had about 3 weeks that I found out, oh, okay, I guess we're going to do this now. And so I read a book and I was trying to wrap my head around it, but I went into the labor process and I labored for 4 hours without any dilation. And for me, I'm very goal oriented. So if I had dilated a half a centimeter or something, at least I would have known, okay, every 4 hours, I'm going to go a half a centimeter. So here's where we're going to be in X number of hours. And I could have gone, but to have a 0, I was like, oh no, I cannot progress. I don't know. I just got into my own head versus if I had, so I ended up having an epidural and my body relaxed and I dilated in 30 minutes after that. And I was pushing about an hour after I had the epidural. And it was a challenge and I did have to pray through that because I couldn't feel my muscles. So now I can't push. And there were other complications that kind of came in with me doing the epidural, and I know that's not uncommon. And so hindsight, I was like, oh, I could have had somebody like yourself, for instance, who could have coached me and got into that mental headspace that you're talking about, because this is a mental experience, and said, you're good. You're doing exactly what you need to do. Relax, allow your body to do what it's designed to do, and kind of get me into that place. But I just was like, whatever. So I did what I had to do in that moment, and it's not like I'm like, oh, I regret this or anything like that. Like, I have my son, and it was, still a good experience, and I had a midwife deliver, and I was able to, like, God truly blessed my birthing experience because I was able to push, and I was able to even, like, I don't know if the epidural kind of wore off. I was able to reach up and at least touch his head as he was coming out and kind of have some of those really wonderful moments during the process. And I really adored my midwife, and she was wonderful. But a doula would have been beneficial in that scenario, I think.
Yes, for sure.
That's exactly what you do, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I love that you feel called to hospital birth, and I think that's great. I have a question that I wanted to ask, and this is completely off topic, and it's just kind of coming up as we're talking, and I made a note here. So like I said earlier, and if you, I know I haven't prepared you for this question or anything, you haven't, this isn't on the list that I sent you. I try to give my guests a little bit of a heads up. So I like I said, I had my friend, we've had conversations about home birth versus hospital birth and all of that sort of thing. And she's very adamant that like, no, you should have, you know, your child in a hospital because you don't ever know what's going to happen. And any kind of emergency that might come up, we're there, we have it, it's done in a minute, in a matter of seconds. And something that, you know, should be a simple fix can get very complicated if you're not in the hospital. My question to you is, do you think there's a happy medium between that hospital? Is that what the birthing center is supposed to be, or what is that? Because I just would imagine that there has to be a way to have both. What do you think?
Right. So what most people don't understand, and I don't know why they think so differently of birthing center versus home birth. They're both midwives, both licensed midwives that attend each birth, whether it be at home or at a birthing center. And so there's really no difference, just to clarify that. No difference at all. The only difference is that a birthing center, you actually go to a facility, usually some type of a house, a more homey feeling, and feel more comfortable. And so you would go to a facility to give birth versus at home, you would stay home and the midwife would come to you. Now, what most people don't understand is that midwives are medically trained. I mean, they have to go to college and take very specific classes. They have to go get certified by the state. They have to go and work so many hours under another licensed midwife as their preceptor. They have to put in so many hours, and then they also have to do so many births and actually catch a certain amount of babies under the watch of their preceptor. And so that's the thing, is most people think they're not medically trained professionals, and in fact they are. I mean, they're medically trained in resuscitation for newborns and mothers. They, you know, can start IVs and antibiotics. They can actually handle a hemorrhage at home. So the thing is they bring a lot of the same medical equipment that's in a hospital. They bring it with them. They don't necessarily lay it all out on display for you to be staring at and thinking about everything that could go wrong, but they keep it there handy and have their bag open, and it's just there accessible. So in that regard, there's no real difference. The only thing I would say is that, let's say you lived, you know, far away from a hospital, and let's say there was a birth center that was maybe closer to a hospital, then maybe it would be safer to go to a birth center versus stay home. But if your home is closer to the hospital than the birth center, then it absolutely makes sense to stay at home. Now, I want to say too that it's very misconstrued that home birth is more risky than hospital birth. In a MANA report, which is a midwives association, I'm forgetting the rest of it. Anyway, there's a report that has come out, a study, I should say, that's come out stating that home birth is, in fact, and can be safer than the hospital for healthy moms with low to no risk during their pregnancy. And that's because in the hospital setting, you are exposed to, you know, many different germs and bacteria and things. It's not a sterile environment. You've also got many interventions that you're coming up against. So lots of times hospitals have an agenda and they want to do this and they don't want to do that. And if your labor isn't going this way, then they're going to intervene and do that. And the thing that most women don't think about is that there are consequences. There are risks to every intervention that they are doing. I mean, there's even risk for having too much IV fluids, because giving your body unnecessary large amounts of liquid, which then puffs up the baby. And so there's, you know, some small risks associated with that. But then, of course, you know, epidurals and Pitocin. I mean, there's, you know, really risky things that can take place with those types of interventions. Whereas at home, we're letting the natural process unfold. And so I think birth is painted often to be a scary life-threatening medical crisis, really.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's very primal. It is, I mean, women have been birthing for centuries. And while, yes, sometimes there are things that happen and take place, that's the beautiful thing, is a licensed midwife is very well trained in her techniques, in her methods of how to help a mom. Not there to play around either. I mean, if they start to see some signals that maybe baby doesn't seem to be doing as well, maybe something with mom, then we're going to pack up and we're going to go to the hospital. We don't just sit around and try and prove something. We stay home as long as things are going smooth and great. And if they aren't, then they pack up and leave. Okay. So realistically, the hospital transfer rate for midwives and home births is about 10%. And I don't know the percentage within that, but I can tell you the good majority of that is they're transferring due to maternal exhaustion. She just can't go on. She needs an epidural. She's too tired, can't push her baby out, that type of thing. So the risk is very, very small for having a home birth at home, because we're not messing with and doing risky things. We're actually working with nature and the way our bodies were made.
Yes. And just, so this isn't really a question. This is just me getting up on my soapbox, but it's just, as a culture, like, I don't know if this is, you know, maybe Europe is kind of like that too. I don't know what the birthing experiences are globally, let's say, but I feel like in our country, yeah, pregnancy and birth is almost like you said, like we're in a hospital. It's this medical emergency. And I think that just an observation that I made when I was pregnant and having to take disability for maternity leave, like as if I'm disabled because I'm pregnant. And I'm like, no, I'm not disabled. I'm actually—
Let's treat it like a sickness.
Yes, it's a sickness. And so it's just, I think that's why, I don't know, I think that creates a weird headspace for us as women trying to have children. So anyway, that's just a little side.
Say that we have some of the highest maternal and infant death rates in the world. You know, we're at the top of the list. And if you look at the other countries that are more home birth, midwife-based births.
Yeah, well, and I know, I think, I can't say for sure currently, but I know at one point in time, Cuba, which is one of the poorest countries in the world and has, you know, no aid, we don't associate with them or anything. They are using, you know, what they have left over from the 50s. So I've done a lot of work with Cubans, and I've done research, and I actually did a documentary pertaining to Cuba, and they had at one point in time, and may still had a 0% infant mortality rate. Like they didn't lose them. They did not lose them. And so I thought that was always incredible, because you think of an impoverished nation that there's so much suffering, and in fact they had medicine down and they were having great success with childbirth. So it can be done. Okay, so with Plexus specifically, one of the new things that we have been talking about as a company is this human microbiome. So, you know, we've always talked about inflammation. We've always talked about gut health. And gut health, yes, is directly correlated to what we now are learning about with the human microbiome. And that is all of the bacteria that exists in our bodies. So for long, you know, as I've studied women's health and my own, you know, my own health as a woman, one of the things that I was learning about is that, you know, how we have our babies, and a vaginal birth specifically, helps in the establishment of our children's bacteria. Is that accurate? And if so, can you elaborate a little bit on that? Do you know, can you talk about that?
Yeah, so when you give birth vaginally, your baby is exposed to 300 different immune boosting bacteria. And so baby is bathed in good bacteria coming down the birth canal. Baby has exposure, and they call it early seeding of the baby's gut, because the baby's gut is completely sterile, but it has potential access to some of your good gut bacteria through the umbilical cord, through the placenta, and through the amniotic fluid. And then, of course, your vaginal canal. So when your water breaks, ideally, let's say in a home setting, your water breaks, all of that good bacteria, you know, some of it comes flushing out with the water, some of it's still there. So as baby's being born, a baby's skin is like a sponge. And so it's soaking up that good bacteria. It's also ingesting it via, you know, its mouth, nose, and so it all goes into that seeding process of, that's the first exposure that baby has. And lactobacilli is a microbe that is usually one of the earliest organisms to dominate the infant's gut. And, you know, the mother's amniotic fluid and just, you know, all of that comes out, in some countries, I don't know if we're doing it here yet. The US seems to be behind in all of that, but they're in some cases bathing premature babies that have been born via C-section, mother's amniotic fluid, getting them a chance to be exposed to that good microflora. Where in the hospital setting, we are, you know, squirting women down with betadine, septic, because the birthing world has some nonsense idea that birth is germy and disease ridden, and in reality it's you know, it's very sterile, and it's healthy, and it was the way that things were meant to be. So, you know, there's two polar opposite experiences, but yes, to answer your question, gut microbes, for sure. So there was a study done actually that swabbed a newborn baby's mouth and sampled the baby's bowel movement from a baby that had a vaginal birth and a baby that had a cesarean birth. And unfortunately, the cesarean birth have the normal, you know, amounts of good bacteria that typically show up. In fact, it had hostile, germy, bad bacteria that came up within that study. And so it's very unfortunate that, you know, if a doctor is driven by, you know, the money aspect, or they have an agenda, or they have, you know, they need to get home to, they're literally robbing that child of its good start to health in this life. And so back to, you know, the mom and the mom's importance of her microbiome. I mean, just for pregnancy alone, your microbes can determine if you have high blood pressure, how your weight gain is going to be, how your glucose levels are, how your cravings are. And then, you know, in utero, like if doctors don't think about it, but I mean, when given an antibiotic, which an antibiotic, I mean, its job is to kill off all of our bad bacteria. And with that, it does not discriminate. So there goes our good bacteria. They don't think about the repercussions of that for a pregnant woman. So now we have just wiped out a pregnant woman's, you know, good flora, potentially wiping out whatever seeding was done to the infant's resident good bacteria. And, you know, and when the mom is depleted, let's just put it to this way, bacterial vaginosis and group B strep with moms with depleted vaginal flora. So it's very important that a mom is on a probiotic. Most of America, our gut flora, our good and our bad, is out of whack. It's supposed to be 20% bad, 80% good. And realistically, most of us, that's the opposite. You know, we have 80% bad and 20% good. So our goal is to raise up that number and to bring plexus into it. that is what is so incredible about our Probio 5 specifically. Enzymes that bring down, tame down, I should say, and destroy much of the bad bacteria, fungi, hostile organisms, you know, cellular debris and all of that lives in our gut and body. And so it's so very important to tame down the bad and then replenish the good. And now we have our vital biome, which is in a high count. Lots of CFUs, lots of good flora that go in and seed our gut in large amounts to replenish the good.
Yeah. And I have the bottles here just so you guys can see. Plexus does manufacture and produce 2 high quality probiotics, which is what Autumn is talking about right now. So this is the Probio 5, and this is weeding out the garbage bacteria that is in your body, that is overpopulated within your body because of poor diet and antibiotics and environmental factors and any number of issues that we have and reasons why we're exposed to bad bacteria or dominated even of bad bacteria. And that is one of the leading causes and root causes of so many illnesses during you know, our life, but also during pregnancy. I mean, do you know, does this help much with, or can it potentially help at least with the morning sickness and things like that? Does that have anything to do, do you know, does that have anything to do with being dominated by bad bacteria potentially, or is that more of a hormonal factor, although it's also
that is a different subject. Typically, it's a hormonal aspect, but it also can be an overburdened liver, and the liver has problems processing all those extra hormones during pregnancy, causing nausea. You know, there's a couple different, you know, aspects to that. But obviously, cleaning up your insides, having a healthy gut. I mean, we have, I can say, yeah, they don't have morning sickness like they did before.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there very well could be something to that.
Yeah, I mean, and cleaning up your gut is never a bad idea. Like, it's just not. And then this is the Vital Biome, which they just released last month. And this is an incredible probiotic. This replenishes the good bacteria, and it's got 8 different probiotic strains, and that is a huge number of probiotic strains, and so it's very exciting. I am reaping the benefits. I love this probiotic. It's absolutely fantastic. Yes, it has enhanced my mood, my ability to handle stress, and a number of other issues. And in fact, my research has indicated that having good quality gut health can in fact help with hormonal imbalances that can, the research that I did was more about reduction in testosterone and estrogen, and as it pertains to sex drive of, you know, impotence and other issues, a lot of chemotherapy patients who lose, you know, the estrogen after a hysterectomy or something like that. So that was my research, but it was all hormonal based, and there was a lot of evidence that pointed to a good quality probiotic such as the Vital Biome helping balance that hormonal imbalance that's going on in your body. So that could potentially be something of benefit. Let me ask you this though, Autumn. If a mother has a hostile microbiome and she's dominated by bad bacteria, can that, do you know, does that have an impact on the child? Or do they, or in the birthing process and that sort of thing, are they more protected and they're really more being exposed to good stuff than bad?
Yeah, according to what I've read scientifically, it is said that, you know, the mom's amniotic sac protects from bad bacteria and, you know, other toxins and environmental, you know.
Okay. Okay.
Fact that, you know, the mom either does have a good supply and a surplus of good bacteria can absolutely result in that baby having a healthier gut at the initial start of its life versus a mom that's very depleted and actually doesn't have much of any. Maybe all of it's destroyed and gone, so it doesn't have anything to provide, you know, to the baby, and therefore mom probably has, you know, things like strep B, or maybe could have something like bacterial vaginosis, and then, you know, you're going to get pumped full of antibiotics, and then it's going to kill off, you know, if there was anything left, it's gone now. And, you know, and then babies, instead of being exposed and seeding its gut with all the good bacteria that it needs for its immunity and its first start in life, we're just, you know, feeding it, and it's being exposed to all sorts of toxic chemicals and prescriptions and things. And it has, you know, and then that's not even, you know, thinking about the formula versus being breastfed. And
right, I know that's a whole other subject that I really would love to discuss too. But yeah, please continue. I didn't mean to cut you off, and if you want to discuss it, let's talk. So go.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, you know, breastfeeding is you know, one of the, so that's like the third way. So the first way is birth canal, being bathed, well, no, excuse me, amniotic sac internal in utero is the first exposure usually, assuming mom has lots of good bacteria. Then the birthing process and the absorption on its skin. And then the third aspect of seeding your baby's gut is nursing, breastfeeding, and, you know, and of course, supplementation with probiotics is a great way to do that. I mean, that's the beautiful thing, is we fix and replenish, you know, and that's our goal. We live in such a toxic world where we've always got invaders trying to destroy our good bacteria. And that's why it's so important to be on a probiotic daily.
Yes, I agree. Specifically, do you know, or have you worked with any women who have utilized Plexus during their pregnancy? And if so, for what reasons?
Yes. So we've had lots of people on my team specifically do very well on the triplex. Many of them had gotten the thumbs up from their OBGYN.
Okay.
I personally have a friend that's a midwife, and she actually came to me and inquired about our triplex. And I said, well, hey girl, you know supplements, take a look, see what you think. And, you know, this is typically what it's doing for people. And so she wanted some help with her cravings. And she also wanted to make sure that she had a very healthy microbiome, and that she was able to kind of keep her blood sugar balanced and not gain too much weight. So, and obviously, you know, your microbes in your gut have a big play in that. So she, you know, she looked at the products and said, heck yeah, I'm jumping in. So at about 6 months along, she started Plexus, continued through her pregnancy, and then thereafter, after she had her newborn, and was nursing and doing fantastic. So yeah, we've seen lots of women just thrive. In fact, we have one mom that she was having her 7th baby.
Oh my God.
And she's on our team, and it was such a testimony to these products, because I mean, she's older than she's ever been. She's going through her 7th birth, and just the toll that all that takes, plus being exhausted from having 6. And yet she had her best pregnancy, the way she felt, levels, her sleep. I mean, wow, what a testimony to these products.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. That's incredible. 7 kids. I mean, you got to give it up for that. And then to have it be her most, you know, like manageable experience so far, that's wonderful. And I've known, I know, you know, on my team, or sort of sideline, there's somebody on our team who has used it for gestational diabetes, because the Slim helps balance blood sugar, and so she's used it for that. I know of other women who have used the BioCleanse, you know, specifically to help with the constipation that they get during pregnancy. And so some of the side effects have been able to be treated, and successfully, by utilizing some of these supplements. As far as our multivitamin or our omega, do you know anything about those as a prenatal? My understanding is that those are good prenatal options.
Yeah, you know, I just recently, someone wanted me to verify with my personal holistic doctor if our vitamin would be suitable for a prenatal. I mean, in my thoughts, it was, from what I knew. And sure enough, she said, yeah, looks great. Awesome. So that's her opinion. And, you know, it's always at your discretion. But I mean, it is a phenomenal vitamin, because you're going to get, you're going to be able to absorb it. It's bioavailable. It's methylated. So in case you don't know, we have folate versus folic acid. And typically folic acid is synthetic, so folate is in its methylated form where the body can readily use it, plus all the minerals and things, the polyphenol antioxidant blend, and all your basic nutrients are there.
So folate is different than folic acid?
Yes.
I did not know that. I have a chemotherapy patient who is taking the probiotics, both of the probiotics, and utilizing the BioCleanse, and she was looking for a multivitamin, but she said she couldn't take folic acid, and I saw the folate, and I said, oh, well, there's folate in there, but I guess that just goes to show, have the doctor look it over, because a doctor may have said, well, actually, folate is different than folic acid. So thank you for that little tip. I'm going to let her know that actually she may want to consult with her doctor about that, because that could be something that would be of benefit to her as she's trying to rebuild her body, you know, after it's been torn down. So interesting. Off topic, but interesting for me, off topic. Okay, so let me see here. And these women, they're birthing healthy babies, right? I mean, amazingly healthy babies. Yes?
Yes. They had, you know, great labors. In fact, I have two friends, personal friends, who actually were struggling to conceive. One was trying for 12 months, the other for over 18 months. And I think the one was on Plexus or Triplex for about 2 months. The other one was on for about 1 month. And what do you know, after all that time, they're conceived. And
wow.
So, you know, as though there are definitely explainable reasons as to why that is. I mean, if you look up candida and infertility, if you look up how blood sugar can impact our hormones, you know, there's definitely possible explanations for why Plexus is helping. I mean, those aren't the only two testimonies in the company. Right. So not to say that, you know, it 100% of the time does that, but for my two friends, they were able to conceive, they had beautiful pregnancies, and now they had beautiful, healthy babies.
Wow, that's wonderful. All right, well, we're kind of closing in. We got about 5 more minutes left, and I just wanted to touch on postpartum health. So do you get to oversee much of that, or kind of once the birthing process is done, do you get to follow anybody postpartum?
So yeah, our role, I mean, it differentiates person to person, doula to doula type thing, but each doula has different you know, routines with their clients. For me personally, we work together at 32 weeks and at 37 weeks. We meet, we talk, lots of questions, lots of you know, diving into fears and planning and seeing the vision of what she wants her birth to be like. Really just diving in emotionally, mentally, and then going over some positions and things physically, you know, things that she can be doing before I arrive. And so at the time of labor, when she's ready, usually that's about the time that she's finding a harder time of relaxing, and she's finding that she's tensing up more. And anytime you're, you know, tensing up, it creates more pain, more stress. You're not as relaxed and calm. And so once I get there, I stay with the mom until she gives birth. And so thereafter, usually until she has breastfeeding established. And then I come back about a week later and we have our postpartum visit. And I for sure look for, you know, signs and symptoms of anxiety, depression. You know, we talk about and process her birth experience, maybe what she would have liked to have had, you know, she wishes would have been differently. But we look at the positives for what it was. And yeah, overall, just kind of, you know, see how she's doing, and be there as a support. So now, typically for a birth doula, that's where our job sort of ends. Not to say that we don't want to keep a contact, and I'll still text them a couple weeks after that and see how they're doing, and just see if they, you know, want to talk or need any support. But there's actually something called a postpartum doula that you can hire. Some birth doulas do continue on and become a postpartum doula, but a postpartum doula is someone that you hire for that nurturing kind of servant, mothering support after you give birth. So she's going to be there at your house for a certain amount of hours per day, you know, helping you with baby, helping you nurse, maybe doing the laundry in between, maybe helping you get your first couple meals thereafter, you know. So she's there, and each one varies, same thing. I mean, you can hire one for, you know, a couple weeks, or I mean, I think I've heard up to a month. So it just depends. But it, of course, depends on the doula as well.
Right. I'm like, my kids are 5 and 3, and I could use that like now. Like,
yeah.
Okay. With the postpartum thing, so establishing breastfeeding is one major issue. And then going back to our Plexus products, I know we have a huge group, like 25,000 members of Plexus and breastfeeding. Do you know, have you talked to anybody who has benefited from utilizing Plexus during the breastfeeding process, and how has that impacted their breastfeeding?
Yes. So first of all, being on a probiotic in general, which is of course what we have, and amazing ones at that. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to contribute to not only your immunity, but that's further passed on through your breast milk to baby.
Yes.
So they get to reap those benefits. And there is, just an FYI, growing literature, of course, and we have the scientific backing now. Mm-hmm. Probiotics can help with anxiety and depression and things like that.
Yeah.
For mom. But to answer your question, yes. So actually, funny enough, just recently we had an ambassador. She is my level 2, and she has been on Plexus for probably coming up to a year. And she started and got pregnant shortly after. But with her first child, prior to Plexus, she really struggled having enough milk supply to provide to her newborn. And she, you know, tried to pump a bit to have some extra, and just was really, really struggling. Of course, had done everything she could, had talked to her doctor, lactation consultants, all of that. Just wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. And now she just had her second baby. And she just shared with me, I got to see her like about a week ago, that she has no problem by this time in breast milk.
Awesome.
She has, in fact, an overflowing supply, and lots stored up in the freezer for her little one. And it's just such a new experience for her. And she absolutely attributes it to these Plexus products. And if you do your research, you'll see that there is a correlation between blood sugar instability and then a mother's milk supply.
Interesting. Yeah, I know my upline, just like 2 up, I'm her level 2. She had a baby about 9 months ago. She's been exclusively pumping, and she pumped over and above what her baby needed, so much so that she was able to donate 30 gallons of breast milk. It's distributed amongst 3 different babies, but do donor milk. Yeah. 30 gallons. I'm like, that's insane. You're like a cow. Like, you're seriously, I mean, come on. So that was incredible. And she does give that credit to Plexus. And also her return back to her body was the fastest she's ever returned to her postpartum body, like her pregnancy body. And that was her 3rd child. And it gets harder after each child typically to get back to your body before. And it was like super fast. And she stayed pretty small during her pregnancy too, actually.
Yeah, I have a couple friends like that as well. And one of them actually, was really comparing her Plexus pregnancy to her previous. And I mean, just the puffiness in her face, I mean, that just wasn't there in her second pregnancy. Just her overall look, and just her, her stature and all of that, with weight gain and all, was just perfect.
Wow. Well, awesome. Autumn, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your vacation to do this with me and share your vast knowledge of doula work, childbirth, and the Plexus products, of course. So really, truly, thank you so much for being here with us tonight, and it's been wonderful getting to talk to you and hearing all the information that you had to share. So thank you so much.
You are so welcome, and it is my pleasure to come on because this has been such a treat. My two passions, Plexus and birth. So to combine them into one, meeting and talk is just my dream. So I loved it.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. All right. Well, until next time, you guys, this has been Plexus Life. Please tune in next Friday, 7 p.m. Plexus Standard Time, Pacific Standard Time. We will be here. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.